Welcome back to another video. Today we're in Devil's Lake. I just drove up here this morning and we are going to try and catch some walleyes this evening before I get things packed up for the little trip we're on right here. And yeah, without further ado, I'm just gonna get things loaded and we're gonna walk out to a new spot. It's really cold out here right now, as you can see right there. I think you can see it anyway. Well, maybe you can't see it. It's -1 degree out right now, which is a little bit chilly. So we're gonna be setting up in the house and we're gonna see if some evening walleyes wanna come in and grace us with their presence. All right, so you guys just saw that walleye come up. I just pulled out this rattle bait and I'm ripping it. Had one come in instantly. Now, one problem that I got right now is that my minnow bucket is just freezing cold out here. And my minnow bucket is actually, like, the top on it is actually frozen shut. So we might be going baitless today. And that's kind of the main reason why I'm running this rattle bait, is the fact that I don't have any meat. And sometimes you can get a little bit more of a reaction strike from these fish when you're using something super aggressive and vibrating like this. But yeah, that could be one issue this evening, not having bait, but we'll see if we can rattle them up with hard baits. And also another awesome part about it being really cold today is the fact that I cannot get my heater to fire up. So that's a little bit of an issue. We may have some smoke clouds today, so hopefully we'll have some fish for you before the sun goes down and it gets even colder. There we go. Oh, no! Darn it! Darn. That guy came in. That was my second interaction. It's only been a couple minutes here jigging this rattle bait. That one came up and smashed it. I did not slow down the presentation at all this time. Last time I kind of slowed down and gave it kind of a little bit more of a wiggle in place and kind of moved it up sort of as I was wiggling it. This time I just kept on bobbing it. And it came up and absolutely crushed it. And yeah, I don't know, maybe I gotta loosen up my drag a couple ticks. Might have ripped it out of its mouth, or maybe it just didn't get a good strike on me. But at this point, it's looking like we're definitely attracting fish to the hole with this bait. So we're gonna keep on ripping it. Interaction number 3. It's pretty cool. You know, I really haven't used a rattle bait a lot. My buddy Brett really likes to use rattle baits, and he's had a lot of success with it, and I just, you know, I haven't picked it up. I've always been the guy to either have, you know, some sort of horizontal minnow bait like a puppet minnow, or you know, a spoon is just always a go-to for me. But yeah, the rattle bait deal is really cool, and it's fun to see how they interact with it, because they get real fired up when they come in and try and strike that thing. So it can also be a really effective tool when, you know, the fish are in a pretty good mood. And also where we're fishing right now is this pretty big flat area where I really feel like I need to be attracting fish to my hole. You know, in theory, they're just going to be roaming up and down the break, you know, maybe coming up and down from deeper and shallower water. But right now we are in 7 feet of water, and we're, you know, a good ways from shore. So this is just a slow sloping area that, you know, doesn't have like a ton of structure. So right now a rattle bait makes a lot of sense to draw those fish to us and give them a reason to come to our hole. All right, so I need to rant for like just 1 second here. Why is it that like stuff always breaks, stuff always goes down when you're like really, really far away from your home? So I make the big long trek to Devil's Lake, which is, you know, really cool lake. As you can see, we've already marked some fish that have, and one actually was willing to take a bite out of a rattle bait, which is like, back home, that's not a common thing, right? Like usually, at least, you know, a lot of Minnesota fish are way too finessey to do that, at least, you know, on some of the stocked walleye lakes I like to fish. So anyway, now I'm kind of getting off on a different topic, but basically, like, stuff never breaks down when you're at home, at least not for me. It's always when you're on trips. It's always when you're like way too far away from anybody to be able to kind of like recover. So if this was back at home, like, I could have borrowed another heater from my in-laws or my dad or, you know, one of my buddies. And of course I'm like hundreds of miles away from anybody that I really kind of know that I can borrow gear from. So I'll have to figure that out for the next few days. But yeah, aside from that, like, obviously, you know, not having minnows is not ideal. With the minnow tank, the lid of it freezing on, and that just comes with the territory of it being so stinking cold out right now. But that's actually pretty common. That happens more often than when I'm just on long trips. But we're going to make the most of it. At least we've had a few fish come through, which is, you know, always a good sign. All right, so here is a closer look at the bait that I was running that those fish came in and took a look at. Looks like it's a little blown out from the lighting. But anywho, that's sort of like a moderate size rip and shad, which is basically just a standard rattle bait. So when I rip that thing up through the water, it vibrates like this, and that puts a lot of vibration into the water, and it also activates some really loud rattles. So it's a really good tool for calling fish in from a distance. Now I'm fishing this on a faster action rod. It's a longer one, it's 38 inches, and it's got a fast action. It breaks about right here, which, as you can see, is pretty darn close to the tip. And I like to have a faster action rod when I'm using these rattle baits because I feel like I can control the bait a little bit better. You know, some people will use a more parabolic, even sometimes they'll even use glass rods in this situation. But if you are going to use something that has a little bit more of a parabolic action, you need to make sure it has a little bit more of a higher power so that you're not maxing out the rod as you're ripping it and working that bait. But this is my setup. I have 6-pound fluorocarbon on here as well, and that's just how I do it. I also make sure that I have, let's see, there it is. Make sure that I have a swivel as well. That's really critical as this bait's going to be ripping this way and then ripping that way, and you know, you can get a lot of line twist if you're not paying attention. But basically how I'm going to work this thing is get it down there. I'll turn on this GoPro quick. How I'm going to work this thing is, generally I'm going to fish it somewhat close to the bottom, and it looks like I got all tangled up here. How I'm going to work this thing is basically I'm going to fish it sort of in the bottom third of the water column. Right now we're in really shallow water. This is 7 feet. And I'm just going to do short little rips, as you can see. Moving it only about this much, just enough to activate the rattles. And depending on the type of rattle bait that you're using, that might require a different speed or distance of rip. But for this is all I really need to do, is just a 1 foot little pops. In open water, you'll see people doing the big giant rips, ripping at 5 or 6 feet. That's not necessary through the ice. You just need to get some vibration in the water column, a little sound to attract fish. And if you're being way too aggressive with it, there's a chance you might be scaring fish away. So basically, I like to pop it, let it rest for a second, pop it, and that's kind of how I like to have my jigging cadence go as far as when I'm not marking fish. But once I do see a fish come onto the screen, there's a couple different options. Number one is you can kind of just give it a slow wiggle, kind of on a tight line, and get that bait to just kind of waggle in the water column, and then kind of slowly take it away from the fish. And that's kind of the more finesse approach. So one thing that I've noticed when I'm using these is, you know, when you're ripping it like this, sometimes you'll get fish that will come in that are super tuned up, and they're just ready to drill you. And, you know, oftentimes I like to slow down my presentation and give it that wiggle, but sometimes that turns the fish off. Sometimes, you know, they're coming into your area expecting you to be kind of flamboyant and all over the place. So sometimes you just gotta read the mood of the fish. You know, if a fish turns you down or is kind of turning his nose at you when you're kind of giving him the slow wiggle, sometimes that just means you gotta fire him back up. So if I'll do that, if a fish will come in and look at me and then kind of turn away, I'll just start working that bait again, try and get its attention. And sometimes that walleye will spin back around and reinvestigate. And I like to give them a different look when it comes in the second time. So oftentimes, you know, that first time I'll give them the slow wiggle, but the second time I will be a little bit more aggressive, you know, and kind of give them like a 1/2 foot pop and kind of get that bait to just pop over here, pop over there, just enough that the fish stays kind of fired up, but not so much that the fish has a hard time chasing it down. When you're kind of in these cold water situations through the ice, and the fish's metabolism is a lot lower and they aren't moving quite as quickly, you know, when you're in open water, you can be ripping that bait and that walleye is going to come in and crush it. But in these colder water situations, the fish are a little bit more lethargic and you can't take it away from them that much. So basically, even when you're being really active, you have to be a little bit more conservative with your jigging strokes. Well, after a nice long drive over here to North Dakota, I figured I'd squeeze in a couple hours of fishing just to see if I could get on some action, maybe run into something that I can try again later in the future. And yeah, I guess you could say it was relatively unsuccessful. The fact that we saw some fish is pretty cool. Just to set up the house randomly in a spot and pull out a rattle bait and end up getting one bite, I think is pretty cool. But it's just one of those deals where, you know, you don't have a lot of time, you can't really look around, and you know, without like a ton of information, just to go and try just a random spot on the side of the highway here is kind of it's a fun little adventure. But unfortunately we weren't able to put a fish on the ice for you in this particular video, and for that reason it's probably gonna end up being a little bit of a shorter video, but that's okay, because tomorrow I have a little get together lined up with my buddy Cody Roswick, and he is on a killer perch bite on a small lake in the surrounding area. So I'm gonna meet up with him, and I can almost guarantee you that we're gonna smash him tomorrow, so make sure to stay tuned for that. Some of these slough perch bites are really cool and, you know, just way different than anything that you've probably ever seen if you've never been to the Dakotas. The fish grow really quick in this neck of the woods. The fisheries are really fertile, and the ones that have shrimp in them can grow fish extremely fast. I'm talking like fish that are 2 or 3 years old are as big as fish that are like 7 years old or older back in Minnesota where I live, where the lakes are a lot more, I guess you'd say, just clear, and it doesn't have as much nutrients. So anyway, kind of droning on and on about the video that is hopefully going to happen tomorrow. But for now, I want to thank you guys for watching all the way to the end. If you haven't been following along, we're doing 30 videos in a row every single day, and we're about halfway through the adventure right now. So you will definitely be seeing me tomorrow, and probably won't be rattle baiting for walleyes, but hopefully we can get some big jumbo perch for you tomorrow, and we'll see you then.